I think at the end of the day, it's about realizing that each day is a day that you're never going to get back. So it's living it to its fullest, and the day is broken down into moments.
Welcome to another episode of Challenge Your Mindset. I'm your host, Nura, and today is a very special day because this episode is unlike any other episode. This is our first collaborative episode with a very, very special guest, Dr. Sara Jabir.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Sara and I, we've known each other for a few years at this point. We've worked together within the community. So Sara, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I was going to say I've loved working with you in the past, and I'm super excited to be on your podcast. A little bit about myself. I love being involved in the community and giving back whenever I can. I love collaborating with other creatives and enjoy the creative process, like digital photography, writing. I graduated medical school in 2020, pandemic vibes, and I'm currently a second-year internal medicine resident, finishing up and going into my third year. So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. And so I wanted to start off by asking you, how do you see the intersection of the humanities and the sciences play out?
Yeah, so I would say there's definitely always a constant interplay. If you study the human in isolation, you're not giving it its full right. So kind of the humanities puts back the spirit into the human. It kind of allows you to see the person for all that they are. So, for example, when I studied medical humanities, we really put a focus on culture, on language, on psychology. All of these things really shape a person, and we really do them more justice when we discover them for who they are rather than just treating what they have.
That's really, really interesting. So today we're talking about how to be present, right? And that could be difficult for a lot of us, especially since we have a lot of distractions around us. What's your definition of being present? Coming from, from the medical humanities, from the sciences, from being a doctor, like from all the different types of backgrounds that you have and your lived experiences, how does that play out? What is your definition of being present?
Yeah, and that's a very good question. I think it's going to vary for every person, but really what allows you to be present is to embrace every moment for what it is. Sitting with yourself and recognizing what emotions you're dealing with. So putting a label, putting a word on what you're feeling, and at the same time realizing your surroundings and also describing them. So a lot for me, for example, like writing was that outlet for doing that. And I realized that a lot of times the things that I wrote were actually the things that I could replay in my head almost very vividly. Sometimes I would write about like patient encounters, for example, and when I look back and read those, I can almost imagine myself in the room. So doing this practice of just being present every day and labeling what you're feeling and also being more attuned to your surroundings will actually make you more attuned with yourself. So you'll start being able to listen more clearly to your inner voice, because if you just allow the rush of emotions to take over and kind of dictate your actions, you're not really allowing your inner voice to be that guide.
That's super interesting. That's a really cool take. I think for me, when I think of being present, it's kind of like everybody's going through the motions. Everybody is physically there. You walk over to one class to another. You go to work, you come back from work, you cook dinner, so on and so forth. But being present is kind of like not only is your physical self moving about your day, but your mental self, your emotional self, everything is able to keep up, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and it's definitely going to take practice. It's not something that you just wake up and you're like, I'm going to be present today. It's a matter of, hey, it's in certain stressful situations, for example, be like, I'm stressed right now because I'm dealing with 3 things at the same time. So you put a pause. So I think a lot of it initiates with a pause because we're so fast paced. We're constantly going through the motions that we're not pausing. I think reflection in and of itself, that pause, is what writing is. Sometimes you just sit and you sit there and you kind of think about what you want to write, and in that process is actually the beauty of being present.
Yeah, I kind of remember this girl who was in my 7th grade class. We would take math together. Obviously, we're all in the same homeroom and such. And the teacher would notice that she's zoned out, and she would always be like, "Are you here? Is your brain here? Like, where are you right now?"
Yeah.
You know, catch her off guard, ask her a question. 2 times 2 or something. But it was super interesting. Like, is it hard to focus? Are you currently there? Like, you're physically there, but are you mentally there? Do you know what's going on? Like, if I were to stop you and catch you off guard, like, what color is an elephant, would you be able to answer that question?
Yeah, I can see where the paradox could play in, where that are you, so attuned and focused into what you're doing that you kind of ignore your surroundings. But I think this type of focus is more that you're so in tune with yourself that you become more in tune with your environment. So I think it starts within yourself and then it branches out. When you find that alignment, you're able to sit and be more present with everyone around you. And I think that's the goal, and kind of what inspired me to use that in medicine is once I was able to kind of align that within myself, I'm able to be more present with the patient in the room, absorbing everything around them, looking at the little personalized details of what makes them who they are. Because oftentimes we go into the room, they're wearing the same hospital gown, they're in the same uniform looking room. So a practice that I had was, for example, looking for like one little personalized thing in their room, something that they had or owned like before coming in. So like, their bag that it looked like this. You can kind of more imagine them, how they used to live their life outside the hospital walls, basically. And that's just a small practice. And there's different things you're going to learn on your own by finding ways to become present with others.
I really like that. I like how you said finding something that makes the situation, it grounds you to that situation. Like, writing allows you to like be more grounded by noticing certain things, being more aware of what is going on around you, just so you'd be able to paint a picture through your writing. I think that's so cool.
Exactly. Yeah, it takes time, it takes practice, and sometimes it's cringe in the beginning, but you just write it out and you ride it and write it out.
Okay, so I have a question for you, and I think you really touched on this with everything that you've said so far, but how can someone who is currently not present, what are some items or list of things that you could offer for them that would allow them to become more present?
Yeah, and again, it's going to be like a personalized journey, and you're going to see that certain things work better for you compared to other things. But I think initially being present in that moment, like we talked about, is putting a label to the emotions. So saying, even if it's, happy emotions, like, right now, this is awesome. I'm spending time with my friend, even saying it out loud. It's cringe. But honestly, like telling people you love them. And then in those stressful situations, like taking deep breaths, being present in that moment, and putting a pause. So whenever you can find those opportunities to pause, I think that's critical.
So when you pause, what exactly should you be thinking about? Like, what do you suggest that, if I'm going to take a pause right now, what should be going through my head to actually center me, maybe?
Yeah, I think it lies in intentionality. So you can apply it to whatever work that you're in. So for example, like just saying, compared to what I do for work, for example, like before going into a patient room, instead of just, looking, oh, this is their room number, let me go in, I'm going to ask them these questions. You put a pause, you say, like, this person is someone who's maybe living like the worst day of their life, and I'm about to talk to them and be a page in their chapter. So for whatever work that you have, kind of adding that intention to it. So pausing in the beginning of the day, saying, why am I starting this day and what is my intention for what I'm going to do? So whether it's little tasks or the beginning of the day, it might just start out that you're able to remember to do it at the beginning of the day, but eventually you start attaching it to every action that you do. And that's ultimately the goal, adding intention behind action.
That's an excellent phrase, like adding intention behind action.
The alliteration.
I kind of like to think about, like, why is someone not present currently? Can you think of anything that could kind of push them away from being present in the situation, and how they could come back to being present?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of distraction, and obviously the cliche, we're going to say that it's our phones, but honestly, and I'm someone my friends know, I take a lot of pictures, and people will say like, oh, you're not living in the present moment, whatever, in that sense. But I feel like if whatever to you means that you're paying attention to detail, I think that's a step towards being more present. So In moments where you feel like you're just in a rush, I think it's pausing again and then paying more attention to details, whether it's the emotional details or the details of your environment. And a lot of times you'll find the answer to why you are stressed. So it's hard to pinpoint an exact, answer to why everyone will be feeling that, because I think you're going to be able to answer it within yourself. So that's something you could practice, is when you feel those rushed moments of distraction, just pause and say, what's allowing me or what's causing me not to pay attention to detail?
That's a really good point. I think for me, I kind of feel like I'm detaching from the situation whenever I feel triggered or I'm afraid of something, and actually bringing myself back by like taking a deep breath and understanding, why am I feeling this way? What is going on in my head really helps me, just feel more grounded, more centered, which is a word I've used like 10 times in the past 2 minutes, but like that's what I like to think of. And one thing that I would say that helps me in being present is when I'm done with one task, it's actually saying I'm done with this task and taking a moment to, like what you're saying, like pause and acknowledge what you just did, acknowledge what just happened, even praise yourself. Hey, I did this one thing that I was, dreading doing. It was like on the bottom of the to-do list for like 3 weeks at this point, but I just wanted to get it done, and now I did it. And like
Definitely.
praising myself,
Yeah, celebrate the little wins and make the little things big things. That's really where actually writing even stems from. It's like taking a small emotion you can write like pages and stories about. All of it starts with one spark. So it's really finding those little things and celebrating them within yourself.
So you talked a lot about how this translates in your life as a physician, as a doctor. How does this translate into your day-to-day life?
Well, I will say it's, again, like an ongoing practice. I think my bio and some of my social media is I'm constantly creating myself, which I feel like we all are in a sense. So it's going to be a constant journey of self-discovery. You're never going to say I'm fully present every day. I think there's going to be days of distraction. There's going to be days of stress. There's going to be days where you're super excited and happy and you want to actually be distracted. But I think at the end of the day, it's about realizing that each day is a day that you're never going to get back. So it's living it to its fullest, and the day is broken down into moments. So that's really how it adds up. If you allow every moment to be lived for what it is, you can always look back and say, hey, I lived those days. I wasn't just passively living them and just going through them. I was actually alive.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's really, really nice, because I think of moments where life might have been hard, or even those happy moments where there's a lot going around, like if you're planning a party and you just want everything to be in tip-top shape, and then the party happens, and during the party you're just thinking of what you have to do next just so you could have a great party, but you're not actually enjoying the party. You're not being present. You're not in that moment. Later on you look back and you're like, oh man, I wish I had noticed this one thing or that other thing. Even during stressful times, those are the times like that really build you. Like, I wish I would have noticed this or that person talking to me in X, Y, and Z way, and how I should have reflected at that time. And it's not to regret what had happened. It's more so being present allows you to better understand yourself and your purpose, like you said.
Exactly. Love that. And you touched on the idea of reflection, which I think is really big too in the idea of being present, because it really helps you propel yourself forward in terms of like, how can I adjust what I'm doing, or why did I act a certain way, like you were describing, like why did I let that moment slip away from me? And sometimes like writing is actually what allows you to like read back how you were feeling or acting in certain situations, and you learn so much about yourself. I have like writings that I used to write. I actually have my first like diary from, I want to say 2001.
Wow.
And there was, some interesting stuff in there, but basically like you really get a glimpse into who you are, and that's like the biggest teacher for yourself is yourself. So imagine reading your own works and you're like, wow, like I used to think like that and I've grown in this way. And it's such a like transformative process to like just write things to yourself. I still have like a letter actually that I wrote to myself that I haven't opened since 2012. So I'm waiting for the big something to happen. I thought a pandemic would maybe be that situation, but we'll wait and see. Maybe the residency graduation or something. We'll see.
I think I really like that you said, it kind of just brings you back to being present. When you're present, you notice these little incremental changes in who you are and the growth that you've come to after however many years. That's really cute, having a letter to yourself from like 2012.
I recommend, yes. Like it just feel like a short little thing, and you can open it at like certain monumental moments in your life and just look back and you're like, wow, like I really did that.
Wow. Okay, so on the podcast, we always end with a weekly mindset challenge. And we'll get into that right after this short break. And we're back. Okay, so on the podcast, we always end with a weekly mindset challenge. So, Sarah, Dr. Jabir, do you have a weekly mindset challenge that would allow people to kind of better understand who they are, to be more focused, to be more present, maybe something they could do for the next week that would allow them to be on their journey?
Yeah, so I'll give two in case for the brave and the cringe along with me would like to join. So I would say the first challenge would be to, on whatever point during whether it's your commute or any situation, like you can pinpoint in your day something that you always do in the morning, whether it's like grabbing your like cup of coffee, or so you have a certain checkpoint. When you reach that checkpoint, make that intention for that day. So kind of be present in that moment, pause everything that you're doing, and just add an intention to what you're about to do, whether it's that present moment or for the entire day. So that would be the overarching challenge. The other challenge for the brave is to sit down and journal a description of whether it's like a stressful moment in your day or like a happy or joyful moment in your day, and just describe the whole environment. So describe like the people, describe the scenery, and that just gets you in the practice of not only like writing and describing, paying attention to details, but then when you live outside of the writing, you're kind of more attuned to those details again. So yeah, those are my challenges.
I think that's really cool. It centers again around writing and how, reflecting about your surroundings and everything that's going on around you and putting it down on paper. It could be really helpful for your own journey and being present. And so with that is it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Challenge Your Mindset. Follow this podcast wherever you may cast your pods. You could also follow us on Instagram at Noura Unplugged. That's at Nora Unplugged. Dr. Jabir, do you want to...
Call me Sada, please. Yes. You can follow me on Instagram. I have Elements of Sarah. I'm also on Twitter. That's more for medical stuff. You can find it on there. Okay. Elements of Sarah.
Sarah with an H.
Yes, with an H.
Great. Well, with that, thank you so much for tuning into another episode. I hope you have a fabulous day and an even better week, and I will see you next week.